Hi there, and welcome to my research presentation. Today I will be sharing the research findings that I've been working on for the last 10 weeks, which centered around CLUE, which is the Center for Learning and Undergraduate Enrichment. It's an academic support program on campus, and it's essentially a study center that offers drop-in tutoring from undergraduate and graduate students who are hired on staff to offer one-on-one tutoring on a drop-in basis. And it's open to all undergraduate students in subjects ranging from chemistry and math to foreign languages and writing. And for the scope of this research, I focus specifically on the math section. My goal was to understand students' needs, expectations, and potential pain points when using CLUE. It is our job, or at least our mission, to support students academically and personally in whatever ways that we can, and so it's important to go through evaluation and see how well we are actually meeting students' needs and proactively identify areas of improvement, and this research is a way to start that evaluation. The research focuses on students who regularly use CLUE for math help, and my goal is to propose actionable design recommendations that can be implemented potentially as early as the 2017 to 2018 academic year. And so the staff members of CLUE will have the summer to kind of think about them and think about what's feasible to implement starting this upcoming academic year. So I landed on the research question, how can we improve the satisfaction of students who use the CLUE math tutoring space? And I focused on the nature of the interaction between students and tutors, and also design of the physical space and how that can contribute to overall student satisfaction. And I gauged student needs by engaging in the following research methodologies. I started with field observations where I kind of put aside my bias and really watched students interact with the space to see what they were looking for, what they needed, what stood out to them, and sort of what I noticed across all of my observations. And that was really helpful in understanding behavior. And then I was able to go on to interviews and follow up about the motivations behind that behavior, and they're really ask very directly, what are your expectations of CLUE? What makes a successful one-on-one tutoring interaction? And kind of follow up on things I had noticed in observations but wasn't quite sure about. And then surveys allowed me to validate, explore, and extend any findings that I had and see if they were representative of the larger population of students who are actually using CLUE. And when I was looking for themes, I searched for things that seemed to be reiterated across at least two of these methodologies and representative of what students were actually doing or said that they needed or voiced. So I really strived to put these CLUE users at the center of my research and highlighting things that they wanted and were looking for and ways that those needs or expectations were being met or not. So ultimately, especially as a staff member of CLUE, I work as a writing advisor there right now. I understand that our goal is to create inclusive community and support students emotionally and academically. And so all of these themes contributed to ways that we were doing that or could do that better. And also my design recommendations are actionable and strive to increase student satisfaction and increase that support. So across the top there, those are the three themes I identified: empathy in a one-on-one tutoring interaction, tutoring as a bidirectional process between students and tutors, and variability in traffic and use. And I saw in all of these being reiterated across at least two methodologies, but also ways that we could implement some design recommendations that could address students' concerns, really hone in on that inclusive community we wanted to create, and hopefully increase overall student satisfaction with the space and their experience. The first theme that I noted was the value of one-on-one empathetic tutoring. So this occurred in my interviews and surveys. During my interviews, I asked, what makes a tutoring interaction successful for you or helpful for you? What do you look for in the tutoring interaction? And although I never used the word empathy, all three students that I interviewed described that in their own words. To me, the most representative quote is here on the left, where a student says, if there's a service that will help you out and understands the undergraduate toils of math, why not use that service? That's how I developed a preference for CLUE. And so this value of empathy was also reiterated in my interviews, where 70% of survey participants said that they wanted their tutor to be empathetic, and 90% said that they valued the one-on-one model. So I think this suggests a couple things. One, that the one-on-one model that we use with students is working. It's meeting their expectations. It's something that they want. It's something that they value. And moreover, I think it's obvious, or at least I would expect students to want professional or academic help because we are a tutoring service, but I think it's less obvious that the way that that tutor approaches the session is equally important. So at the University of Washington, we have really difficult high-level math courses, and it's important to know that the way that our tutors approach the students when, providing help and understanding all of that emotional labor and being empathetic of how hard math can be or how understanding concepts can be difficult is important in scaffolding their learning, but also in their personal growth. And so I realized that our tutors needed to know that that being empathetic could go a really long way, and it was also in line with what our students expected. And the fact that it was present in interviews and surveys suggests to me that it really is representative of CLU math users. So in an effort to meet this goal of creating inclusive community at CLU, which is part of our mission, I propose that we have a lesson plan in new tutor training that focuses specifically on the value of empathy. And as a returning tutor, I would be able to facilitate this discussion. So I imagine what this would look like is working with all of the returning and new tutors and really having some pre-writes and some discussion about the value of empathy. I imagine I would start by framing my research and explaining that this is something that tutors really want, and then having them think in their own ways, in their own lives, ways that empathy from a tutor or a mentor has been valuable, and ways that they can bring that empathy to a one-on-one tutoring interaction in a way that seems authentic. I think what's also valuable about this model is that it can establish a norm and an expectation among all tutors at the very beginning of the year, and something that can dictate student behavior, as in the behavior of tutors, from the beginning and throughout the academic year. And by making this an expectation, we can ensure that our students and our tutors are keeping empathy in mind at every stage, and that it is an expectation in a way that CLU tutors are committed to creating inclusive community and supporting students beyond just their academics. The second finding that I had was that tutoring was a bidirectional process, and students were coming in trying to understand their current level of understanding and ask clarifying questions about where their logic might fall short. And tutors would often respond with open-ended questions or clarifying questions. So in other words, they were really starting from the student's current understanding and trying to build on that. This is really significant because in CLU, we are trying to support students' independent learning and helping them learn beyond just our space. So how do they go home and understand those concepts when it's not 7 to midnight and there's a tutor with them? How do they know what questions to ask themselves when they're taking a test? And I found that students were also looking for that, really understanding concepts broadly, not just getting answers to their homework. This was reiterated in my observations and my interviews. So in my observations, I saw a student looking intently at a tutor and asking clarifying statements, saying if this was true, it would take 2 days and n-1 days to figure out that it was yours. So extending their current conversation beyond and saying, oh, can I follow this line of logic in my own words? Let me know where I might be falling short, and then we can kind of talk through why I think this way or not. This was also reiterated in my interviews, where the interviewee said, instead of going over the problem, I explained why I thought it was right, we discussed the generic form of the problem, and I related it back to the question I had. So the student is clearly seeking conceptual understanding, and my suggestion is in line with that and trying to scaffold independent learning beyond time in CLU. So I propose that we have a binder with worksheets and common concepts used in math classes. I think we would start with Math 1-2x because that's general calculus and frequently used by our incoming freshmen, and then potentially expanding. So there could be multiple copies of these worksheets with common formulas, unit circles, sections for graphing that students and tutors can use collaboratively to understand broad concepts, and the idea is that the student can keep that worksheet and refer to it later. So we are continuing to scaffold their independent learning, and it's also a starting point for conversation about broad concepts, and the students and the tutors can both be really involved in that process. My third finding was difference in traffic patterns depending on the day of the week. I first saw this in observations when on Sunday there were only 5 students in the space. Later found out that only 3 of those were actually students, compared to at least 15 to 20 students in the space on other nights. This was also confirmed in my surveys, where I asked what students they visited, what days students visited when they used Clue, and Sunday got 1 vote, whereas all the other days got 3+ votes. So this lack of traffic on Sunday, when we have when we have multiple tutors on staff, suggests that there are ways we could use that time more effectively and ensure that people are really using Clue. So my proposal is to encourage outreach on Sundays, and I have a promotional flyer example here on the right. And this could be physical signage in the space, such as printing these flyers out, but also using the math listserv and encouraging students to come earlier to ensure that our space is being used every day of the week that we're open, and also encouraging students to be proactive. In terms of areas of improvement in my research, all of my sample sizes were quite small, 10 for surveys and 3 for interviews, and it would have been more beneficial if I had larger or more representative sample sizes that were statistically significant. I also think I could have worked with students who had used clues in the past but don't use it regularly anymore in an effort to understand potential pain points. But the good news is that there's a lot of room for future research. We could look into wait times, since students voiced that as a potential pain point on my survey, but I never inquired further. And we could also look into other parts of the one-on-one tutoring interaction, such as the role of body language and configuration of tables that also contribute to inclusive community, and also the use of technology in general. But overall, I think this research was a really helpful evaluation of the Clue math section at large, very comprehensive and not just focusing on individual tutors. And I hope to pass this on to current Clue supervisors and really encourage these changes to be made and support and promote inclusive community in Clue the way that we strive to every single day. So thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you.